Hello, and thank you for joining me on the Innovate Thrive Other podcast, where I talk all things small business. I'm really excited you're here, and I can't wait to explore the realities of running a business with you. This week, I'm joined by Jade Rose, aka the Shiny Investor, to talk through the fascinating subject of accidentally building a high-risk business. So, huge welcome to Jade. Thank you for joining me. Would you like to just introduce yourself, let everybody know who you are and what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm Jade Rose. I'm a wealth advisor or a financial planner. We use the terms interchangeably. And what that means is I'm basically like a personal trainer, but for people's finances. And I'm taking everything that I know in my day job and I'm bringing that to social media via the Shiny Investor. And that is to educate people on finances or speak to people who may not otherwise have sought out financial advice.
Excellent. It's fascinating. I love following along with you because the subjects are really diverse. And one minute you're talking about pensions or investments, and then the next minute you're talking about interviewing people about aliens, which is which is awesome. And you have to go and check out the Instagram to find out what that was about. Um, so, the question that I start with for all of my guests is, would you say that you and or your business are innovating, thriving, or other this week?
Can I be greedy and have all three?
Yeah, sure, why not?
It's been a good week. So I would say in terms of innovation, I've been developing my website and a whole suite of blogs and information for people. And I have a course launching next month as well. So I'm hoping all of this wraps up either this week or the beginning of next week. So that's really exciting. And then my business, I'm very grateful, is thriving. I've just taken on two really new, exciting clients. I can't say too much about them, but they in themselves are innovating. One is in the music space, doing really exciting things. So I'm super excited about that. And then the other, which is a rarity for my business, is I'm taking a day off. It's Chinese New Year and the out of office is going on. And so that is the other for my business, which actually going into 2021 was one of my intentions, was to kind of slow down and stop putting so much perceived value on the 24/7 grind, which I think inherently in the finance industry, that's how it is. So I'm making more of a conscious effort to hit pause.
Yeah, I think that's where I learnt my 24 hours a day, 7 days a week kind of work ethic was in the finance industry, and it's not a pleasant one. So well done for for smashing through that and taking a day off, because that's what thriving is all about as well, isn't it? It's not just our businesses doing well, but it's us doing well within our businesses. And sometimes that takes stopping as much as it takes action. So yeah, very exciting. Cool. So I would say that I feel like I'm kind of in the innovation space because there's a lot going on in my business which I'm really excited about. So I'm developing a new program and I'm like headlong into that, working with somebody to pull that together and get the launch plan together, which starts very soon. So I feel like that's going on. But when you're doing stuff like that, your brain goes into overdrive, or at least mine does, and then suddenly you start thinking of all the other things that you can do. So I have on my desk, I have this desktop whiteboard thing, it's just next to my writing hand. And so every 5 minutes, I'm like scribbling other ideas that I'm having, like, I need to get all of these done. So I feel like I'm definitely in an innovation space, but a bit like you, like to me that's my comfort zone, so that's when I feel like I'm thriving as well. And then will come the rest when I have burnt through all my ideas and need to stop, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I think the challenge is that the innovation side and the ideas phase is wonderful. It's the execution and the organization around it. I know you use ClickUp as well. It's completely changed my whole working life. Because before I had bit like you, I had bits of paper here and notebook scribble, and I was like, what is going on? So part of my innovation is actually going back to basics. So actually a lot in line with what you do is kind of the background stuff. Because I think when people think of running a business, it sounds like all fun and glamour. And it's, the 4-hour work week and jetting off to wherever you want, whenever you want. There were so many moving parts. So hats off to any business owner out there.
Yeah, absolutely. And something I've started doing recently in ClickUp, if we just pick up on that, because I am obsessed as much as you are, is I have a project section where I have like my current projects and then future projects, and that list grows. But it means that I've kind of parked them, so they're not distracting me. It's like I know I've captured them, I know what I want to do, and then I can plan them in when it feels the right time. And I think that's kind of yeah, we're never, well, I feel like I'll never get to this sort of 4 hour working day thing, but it makes it more manageable, that's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. But I mean, to be honest, I don't know if I would be completely satisfied with a 4 hour work week. Again, maybe it's just the finance background ingrained in me, but I'm someone with ants in the pants, so it wouldn't really suit me to be just doing nothing for the rest of the week. So
No, agreed. So, shall we dig into this fascinating subject of accidentally building a high risk business? And I think to give it some context, it came from a conversation that we were having a little while ago in one of our many Zoom chats that we've had when we were talking about observations that we'd made sort of in the online small business world in which we operate and or partially for you operate. And one of those observations was women are making more money or having access to higher incomes sooner in their career than before. And actually everybody can in the online business world because there's no career ladder to climb. But particularly women, where it takes longer because they step out of things and have children, and then their career gets paused and halted and slowed down, and you know all the stuff we know about from from that side of things. But also the businesses that we're building, because there are so many being built on Instagram or and other social media platforms. So whether it be Google Ads or, you know, where we put all of our eggs into one basket, these businesses actually that are turning over a significant amount of money. I mean, we're talking about, you know, decent incomes here are actually super high risk because we're putting it all into one platform and our entire income relies on one platform that we don't own and that could disappear. And yeah, explain a bit because we had a really interesting conversation about it. So yeah, let's cover off that thing.
Yeah, I think it's a double-edged sword because it's given people and people from certain demographics or backgrounds who may not necessarily have had chance to flourish and thrive, rightly or wrongly, you know, what, 15, 20 years ago. And I think, you know, and you're completely right. There are people making 5-figure months, you know, which is wonderful. But yeah, the thing, this for me, the scary thing with Instagram and socials is, like you said, you have no ownership over the platform. You are, you know, at the mercy of an algorithm, and you are also at the mercy of a very fickle audience, you know, ourselves included. We all have, you know, attention span, I think, is it 6 seconds or something? If something hasn't captured our attention, we just continue scrolling. And so it's not like, you know, in the real world, quote unquote, where you work with your face-to-face clients, you know, you are of service to them and there's a dialogue and there's a relationship. When you're online, you're at the mercy of everyone who follows you because everyone is a potential client. And so the risk there is spreading yourself too thin or kind of chasing the success, if that makes sense. And so one of the negatives for me personally that I've witnessed is a lot of content, a lot of businesses start to look the same because, of course, if you see a successful model, you're going to try and replicate that. Yeah, so I just think with everyone, you know, with us all being at the mercy of the algorithm, people are seeing successful business models and trying to replicate that. And so the information can be the same. And I don't think, you know, any individual is to blame. It's just, like you said, we're all at the mercy of Instagram. And so essentially whatever Instagram wants, we have to give it in order to be successful. So, I mean, for me, I kind of straddle the fence because I'm not just on Instagram. In fact, my business, my regulated business is in real life, if you will. So I'm quite fortunate, I guess, in that way. But a few of the other risks that I've noticed is it's difficult to separate the self from the business. I don't know if you found that, because authenticity, it's not just a buzzword. It's key, I feel, for any business to really show up and be yourself. And so it's difficult to kind of put yourself in a space that is measured by KPIs and metrics and likes and saves, and they become intermingled, which that it can really give your self-esteem a kicking when things aren't going well, and you're like, oh, it's like a stab to the heart, like I've just put so much time and effort into that and it's tanked. So there are pros and cons for sure. I mean, I think on the positive side of things, it's like I said, it's giving people who may not have had a chance to thrive and flourish in business a real at bat. And I think an area I love is the mompreneur kind of demographic, because traditionally from a finance perspective, women who come out of the workplace to have children obviously take a pay cut. They stop earning, or they get maternity perhaps, but their skill set is stagnating as the market is moving forward. And so when they try and get back in, their peers skills wise are like years ahead. And so it just becomes this cycle of trying to chase your tail. So what Etsy and Pinterest and Instagram are offering is a way for mums to make money, and not just make money, like grow actual businesses. Like, what's the name of the bag company? Is it the satchel?
Cambridge Satchel Company.
Satchel Company started from a kitchen table, and it's giving people the opportunity to do something like that. So I think it's wonderful.
Yeah, I love the Cambridge Satchel Company, and her story is incredible. There's a really interesting BBC Sounds podcast with her where she talks through the setup. And I think that's a really interesting point to pick up on, because one of the demographics we talked about was creatives, and often these kitchen table businesses are creative businesses, aren't they? And they're utilizing platforms, and Instagram feels like like you say, Etsy, not on the high street, Pinterest feels like a hub for creative businesses, and it's amazing. And I was doing some research for a client the other day, and like the creative industry in the UK pre-COVID, I mean, obviously that's going to have an impact, but it's worth like £11 billion to the UK industry, to the UK economy. And so these women who are setting up these businesses that are operating from their kitchen tables in the creative industry are having a huge impact. I mean, obviously it's not just those businesses, it includes all creatives, but a huge impact on our economy. And then the scary thing is, the only place that they're talking about it is on one social media platform. And what we want is for these women, these businesses, to grow and sustain through any kind of marketing hiccups where systems might go down, or things like that, or algorithms change, or they put in a different kind of pricing structure so that you have to advertise on these platforms that you'd never factored in, or anything can change, can't it? And I think the shame of it all would be if we lost a percentage of these businesses because they were high risk. So yeah, I feel quite passionately.
Yeah, no, me too. And I love an underdog story, a female underdog. I just love it. I remember listening to a podcast with Karen Brady and Joe Malone, and she was talking about when she started out, and her house was just full of ingredients and bits, as you would imagine. And I remember she said it got to a point where her husband, he was about to leave. He was like, I've had enough. There's hibiscus everywhere and there's fruit everywhere. And he was like, I can't take it anymore. And he came home one day and he said, that's it, I'm going for a bath. And she was like, and in that moment, I thought he was going to leave me because the bath was full of fruit. I thought that's brilliant. But you're right. The special time in a business, kind of, before investment comes in and before, you're scaling up and it's mass production, like that really is where the true essence of creativity is. But it's also in that space, as you said, that perhaps financial education and business education is really lacking, because it's and the reason I started The Shiny Investor is because the classic, you don't know what you don't know. And it's good and well saying the information is out there if you look, but I mean, we are
What do you search? Like,
Yeah, like, and if you don't know the information is even there to look for it, like it's just insane to me. And also, you know, we live in an age where we're bombarded with information every single minute of the day. It's difficult to distill what you need and what you don't. But you're right in terms of the high risk business. I mean, even, you know, going on other platforms. By the way, when you said not on the high street and that's like you've described my bookmarks bar, literally. One of the things that comes through in pitching for investments with women, top tip, is they say that. Let me preface by saying the space is largely biased towards men. I don't think
you don't have to say that.
I don't think I win any prizes for saying that, but you know, but one thing they do say is men will pitch the story and the vision, what it could be. It's going to be this and it's going to be that and it's amazing. And women will pitch the journey of where they've been and how they've got there and kind of tell the story of the legwork and all of that stuff, which is great. But they say, but where is it going?
Absolutely. And actually, this is something I see frequently, and I saw it yesterday, and it really it stood out to me is somebody posting, you know, their journey of why they set up their business, which is all great. And I think it's good to know where brands come from. But then it stopped and it's like, so that's why I do what I do. Right, okay. But what does that mean? Like, what are you translating that into? You've gone through this journey of, you know, awful, difficult things that has triggered this desire and thought and business. But now what? Like what what comes next? What is that? What does that look like? And I think that's the yeah, like you say, that's the sort of capturing piece of information, isn't it? That takes people on that journey with you. We can relate to past journeys, but actually we want to know where are you going to take us in the future.
That one word "and" was probably the best piece of career advice I've ever received because way back and I did the same thing. I'd be like, I've overcome this and this is what I've done. And I whipped out my violin and I was like, isn't this amazing? And this mentor at the time turned around to me and he was like, and? And it knocked me for six. I was like, what do you mean? And I've done all of this stuff. And he was like, that's old news. That was yesterday. He was like, so what? Tell me why I need to be with you going forward. What are you achieving? What problem are you solving? And I was like, that really makes sense. And so I actually apply that in everything that I do, whether it's a client meeting, you know, and like they want to know, so what? How does that help me?
Yeah, I think interestingly, I was a change manager in a past life, and the number one thing we learnt to do is answer the immediate question that comes up into people's minds. And always it is, but what does that mean for me? Like that's the number one question. And you can apply that to everything. It's not just change management. Like you say, it's when you're trying to take people on a journey with you, it's when you're engaging with them, it's when you're pitching for investment, whatever it is, people want to know, so what's in it for me? Like what does that mean for me? And that if you can get that, then yeah, you'll definitely take people with you.
Definitely. You're right. That applies to any skill in business and probably life, even like negotiation. You've got to think the other person's thinking, and what do I get out of this negotiation? So, but just touching on this to digress a little bit, but I'd be interested in your opinion or your experience on, you know, building a business and, you know, you've got your own backstory and you overcome these challenges and, you know, building a business is tough. So you finally get to this point where you're doing it, the training wheels are off, you're taking on clients and it's amazing. And really, well, for me anyway, all I wanted to do was pat myself on the back and be like, well done. And it was in the moment that when I felt like I deserved to pat myself on the back that I realized, oh, it's not about you anymore. It's not about you. When you get to that point where you're ready, you don't matter anymore. It's all about the clients and servicing. And I wonder if you felt the same way. It was kind of this crescendo to get to where you are. And then it's not about Steph.
Yeah, absolutely. Honestly, that describes it so well. So when I set up my business, I want to say, like, obviously I wanted to help people, but it was entirely about me. So it was, what can I do? Like, what's my experience? Who am I comfortable working with? Where can I match the two together and really do something? And not that I wasn't thinking about the clients that I work with, but it was very sort of me first, and then that will benefit the clients, if I get that stuff figured out. At some point in the last year, I suppose, that has shifted. And actually now I have to remind myself to come back to me and think about think about what works for me and what's beneficial for me. And that's an active process, because now it's about, okay, I'm working with this client. This is what their needs are. How do I make that work? What do I do to fulfill their needs? And then once I've done it with one client, it's like, okay, how do I turn that into something? Because that's obviously a need. How do I turn that into something that's then beneficial for other clients? And then, put it out there as something that can help. So it's a real shift from what I think I should be doing to actually listening to clients and them, what they need, and telling me what I should be doing, and stretching myself to achieve that, which is exciting.
That was one of the biggest mistakes I made starting out. And oh gosh, I cringe thinking about it now, but I would get on client calls and I'd be like, I'd read off my CV. I'd be like, and I did this, and then I did this, and so this is why, and I could see them glazing over. And then, of course, I quickly realized, like, nobody cares in a nice way, of course, but I'm there to serve the client. So that's a lesson that I would say to new business owners, to just always bear that in mind. It's not about you, it's about the client.
And I think that ties in really nicely with like the overall theme of this conversation, because actually, if we are just thinking about ourselves, we will do what feels comfortable for us. And I know when we had that conversation about initial conversation about the high risk businesses, we acknowledged the fact that often Instagram is the quick win, right? So I'm focusing on Instagram because that is where the majority of businesses are being built. There's a big community of online businesses there. We focus on the quick win because we have limited time. We're wearing all the hats as a business owner. We haven't gone for investment because, or majority of us haven't gone for investment because that feels scary. So we're doing everything and bootstrapping it ourselves, and so we're very limited. So the things we do, we want to have an instant impact. And for example, I'm part of a few Facebook groups, and yesterday I saw a really sad and desperate plea from someone who's like, I've just started my business, I've put sales posts on Instagram and nobody's buying, I need to sell something soon, otherwise I'm going to be in trouble. And it breaks my heart, because I think the education that people are receiving from gurus, so to speak, it's not helping them build sustainable businesses. And I totally understand that Instagram is probably, at this point in time, one of the quickest ways to grow a business if you're not going for investment and heavily investing in marketing. So if you're doing it organically, if you're bootstrapping, Instagram, if you're not even paying for Facebook ads, for example, it's probably the quickest way to get traction with your business if you are a small creative business or product-based business, or even some service-based businesses. However, the posts that we put out, the content we put out on Instagram has a very short shelf life, which means it requires constant feeding. And that's true of Facebook, and that's true of TikTok and various different platforms. And so if you're looking to build a sustainable business, obviously the conversation is different for influencers. That's a different sort of kettle of fish altogether. But for these businesses, if you're constantly having to feed the sales beast, that can be quite soul destroying. And B, if you're doing it, if literally your sales depend on your feeding it, that is exhausting, and that's a very tiring place to be, because posting takes effort, it takes emotional It takes an emotional toll as well, constantly generating content. And so you have to be on all the time. And sometimes we just don't feel like it. Like we just don't feel like it.
And sometimes it can become performative.
Yeah.
Because you're not creating from a place of passion and authenticity. You're doing it because, like you said, you're just feeding the beast. It then becomes a tick box exercise. And nobody starts a business because they like having the joy sucked out of it. We all do it. I mean, we've all got varying reasons, but it all comes down to it sparks joy. It sets us on fire. It's what we want to be doing. So at the moment it flips and it becomes a chore, then what is the point?
Yeah, exactly. And I think actually that question, what is the point, is the question to ask when you're doing all of this. So when you're deciding on your marketing channels, coming back to like putting our clients first, thinking about where are they? Like where are they? And are they, for example, yes, they might go on Instagram, but are they also searching how-to blogs and videos and looking for information in that way? In which case, having blogs or videos on your website that are optimized, although they take longer to produce and they take longer to get any traction, actually they work when you're not, and you don't have to feed it in the same way. And I think things like that, if you can think about even Pinterest, Pinterest straddles somewhere between social media and a search engine, but the shelf life of content on there is much closer to 2 years, which is a hell of a lot better than 48 hours on Instagram, Facebook. So yeah, I think that's
And for me, Pinterest at the moment, and hopefully it stays this way, feels like a much more organic experience. I know there's still an algorithm and I'm being fed content that interests me, but it doesn't feel like people are selling to me on there. Perhaps they are, and covertly, but it just feels like it speaks to my inner art students. I'm just kind of browsing and I'm taking what I need and I'm leaving what I don't. But going back to the high risk nature of Instagram, what I would say is to not underestimate the value of human connection, especially if you haven't worked in a business environment before, because there are so many soft skills that you just can't learn online or on social media. There are like negotiation or just picking up on body language, different communication types. There are so many skills to cultivate away from what's on a screen. And the biggest source of my clients come from referrals from people that I know who've met me or have Zoomed with me in a COVID era, who say, oh, you need to speak to Jade. So I would say, like, don't get too insular with social media. And going back to my earlier point of like fusing your business and your personal life, because both are online, so it's difficult to separate them. But if it gets too much or you're not seeing traction, just step back and kind of look up and out, because I guarantee there are other people craving that same human connection as well. And everyone's got something to teach you. So like if people are struggling on social media, like one of the best things I would suggest is get onto LinkedIn. I mean, LinkedIn as a platform for content is great, but find someone who's actually doing what you want to do, not just people who say they're doing it or can teach you it, because it's a largely unregulated space. But find someone actually in the job or in the industry that you're trying to work in, and ask them for coffee, ask them for a Zoom call, and you might just get that spark of information.
Yeah, that's such a good tip. And I think you're right. There's a vast difference between someone sharing their experience and someone sharing a methodology that they may or may not have tried and tested. And experience is always more valuable, I think, especially if it's someone who's from a similar background or has gone through the same challenges as you, who you can track their journey. Like you can see how they've overcome certain things to get to the position that you want to be in, or the industry you want to be in, or making waves like you want to make them, or whatever it is. If you can see how they've done it, we're really quick to buy into blueprints and, here's how I did it. Now you do the exact same thing and it'll happen like that. It's about pulling out what's relevant for you, your clients, from other people's experiences, I think.
Yeah. But I mean, what are your thoughts on that? Because I do agree in a sense that like one of my biggest mentors who is just like me. Like we are like two peas in a pod. And so that's an easy blueprint for me to follow. But conversely, two of my other mentors, one is a 50-year-old man, polar opposites. We're constantly clashing. It's amazing. The other one is a guy in America who runs a furniture company. So neither of them have had my career trajectory. And actually, they will stop me and they'll do the ands. I'll be like, what about this? What about this? And they'll be like, no.
Yeah.
They'll be like, that's a horrendous idea. Why would you? And I'm like, oh, I never thought of it like that. And so going back to Instagram and the algorithm, it's a visual echo chamber because it knows what you like and it's feeding you more. And that can create this false narrative of, this is how it's done. When actually that's how Instagram is telling you it's done. Yeah. Based on, a code somewhere in Silicon Valley. So also don't be afraid to look outside of your network as well, as long as you respect them and what they've done.
I think that's the key thing, isn't it? If it's somebody that you respect and admire, and probably your values should align in some way. But yeah, as well as having the people who have had a similar track to you or similar shared experiences, those who are thought challengers, that's where the most fascinating growth can come from sometimes, I think. And open our eyes. I mean, we want to learn as much as we can, because if we can, just because someone's done it one way doesn't mean it always has to be done that way forever, right? So we want to kind of merge the best of all ideas, I think.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So I'm gonna just swing it back around again. I love the tangents. We're going off on some weird and wonderful conversations. But I think we've talked a lot negatively about Instagram. And I think what's important to say is it is an incredibly valuable tool, and certainly not one that should be ignored. It's just understanding its place. And I think now we should probably talk more broadly about what a good model would look like, what a lower risk business model would look like, so that there's some comparison and we can see really how to take these high risk businesses and change that, and what initial steps we can take to change that. If anybody's sat there thinking, oh, I think that's me, like, what do we do next? And so we come from very different worlds in terms of the clients who we work with. So I think it would be great if you wouldn't mind sharing some of the things that you see within your world with your creatives and with your high net worth individuals, and how they have diversified and lowered their risk through diversification. And then I can do the same with my small business owners.
Yeah, definitely. And actually, you're right. I feel like we've just completely torn Instagram apart. No. Instagram is an amazing tool if it's used as part of an overall business strategy. I would say my advice comes from a finance perspective, and that is to treat your personal finance and your business as two separate entities. Because often people will put everything they've got into a business, and if that's fine, if that's your choice. But there are ways to kind of utilize your business to save on tax. There are things you can put through your business instead of from your personal income. Just lots of ways to be smart about it. Something I've also found is, this is more for the businesses that are a bit further along. People think that if the business is doing well today, it will always do well. And that's kind of their safety net or their backup plan. Now, and this isn't to be dramatic, but it's just to paint a real life picture of what can happen. I know a guy who was ready to sell his business. He's had it for 20 years. It was his retirement plan. And because he had this business, he didn't believe in pensions or saving for the future. And that was summer 2019. Now, we all know what came after that. And those buyers that he said were queuing around the block disappeared, and he didn't have any backup. Now, just take that as a cautionary tale that no matter how well your business is doing, always make sure you look after your finances. And the same way, we're saying to diversify across Etsy and Instagram and Facebook, do the same in your business. Have your security part, have your opportunity funds. Some people refer to it as a FU funds. And that's not just for business owners, that's for anything in life. If you want to say goodbye to a boss or to a part, anything that you just need to get yourself out of a situation, have that separate from your business.
Yeah, that's such good advice. And I think so actually before we dialed into this to record this, I was on a call with a self-employed pension provider, or a pension provider for the self-employed, I should say. And that was fascinating. That was Penfold, and really interesting. So definitely something that actually a lot of self-employed don't even do, because it's really difficult. We don't have workplace pensions. They're not set up automatically for us. We don't think about it until we think about it.
And some people just don't know it's available. Some people genuinely just don't know it's there, because when you think about it, when was the last time you saw an advert or a billboard that said, hey, self-employed person, did you know you could take out a personal pension? It just doesn't exist.
No. So anything like that, you're right. Anything where we can diversify what we're doing with our finances personally and with our business is always going to be beneficial.
How would you de-risk a high-risk business?
So for me, it's probably a couple of ways. So one is marketing, and we've touched on it all the way through this conversation so far, making sure that you have a real diversified marketing channel strategy. And it doesn't have to be huge. People hear marketing channel strategy and think they have to have like 15 different ways for clients to find them. It's not that at all. What you probably need is some form of instantaneous connection, like a social media platform where you can build that immediate community. You can engage with your potential clients on a daily basis in your stories, on your grid, and it's more personable. Then maybe something long form, so an evergreen. So we're talking content like videos and blogs and anything that can live on your website and take people to your website. So SEO optimized. They don't have to find you via another platform. They can just Google and find you like that. And then online, there are multiple options, right? So you've got Pinterest, you can have a third-party store, like, if you're a product-based business, we've already mentioned Etsy and not on the high street. So anything like that. Obviously, there are various forms of networking. So at the moment, everything's online. I've tried different styles of online networking. For me, the ones that work are not the ones where I get in a room and do a little sales pitch. That doesn't tend to work for me. So I think it's finding that the type of networking that works for you, that gets you in the room with the people that you want to work with, or the people that can teach you something as well, because networking isn't all about sales. Often it's about learning. And then there's offline stuff, isn't there? So I often talk to my clients about, establishing yourself as an expert in your field. So it could be that you publish a book. It could be that you have a regular speaking engagement with somebody. It could be that you run workshops for a local community project. Like, there's so many things you can do offline as well to really drive your marketing, or in print. So it's really figuring out. I mean, there's no one size fits all. So nobody's going to sit here and say, here's your blueprint for a low risk business, because it entirely depends on what your business is. But really working out where your clients are, as we said earlier, and kind of supporting your business for the long term through different types of marketing. And then the other thing is services. So services or price points, probably is a better way to put it, is working out how people can work with you that are at different stages of the buyer's journey. So some people are really happy to come straight in high ticket or expensive product, and they're really happy to do that. Some people like to test you out first, which is why you see all the big designer brands have really accessible, I say accessible, still far more expensive than everything else.
£400.
Yeah, but compared to the £3,000 items or the 10,000, it's a starting point. Yeah, so it's a bargain, and you get a really nice box. So, so I think having that consideration also means you're not relying solely on one product, one service, and that because that's quite high risk because things happen. So we saw that when we mentioned it already, but when the pandemic hit, those who had a really limited offering, whether it be products or services, a lot of them struggled and had to adjust very quickly what they were doing to continue operating and earning money throughout COVID. So I think that kind of preparation and consideration really helps.
Yeah, that's a good point, actually. And to piggyback off the back of that, I would say use COVID as a way to stress test your business. Yes. Because for people who are a little bit older who may have had businesses or lived to fully experience what 2008 was, because a lot of younger millennials and Gen Zs were only children. If you didn't live through that, now we've had COVID, there will be something else in 10, 15, 20 years time. Hopefully not, touch wood, a global pandemic, but there'll be some type of disaster. And so knowing that now is a great time to really get that kind of disaster plan in place. The what ifs, what if this happened? What if that happens? And for a lot of big businesses, especially in finance, they're like old creaky dinosaurs, getting everyone onto Zoom. It was, how do I download Zoom? You're on mute, Alan, like that whole thing. Yeah. So really that's a great way to de-risk your business. Think about, it sounds like a negative process to go through, but actually it's really, really smart. That crisis aversion, what would I do? For companies with stock, it's the tariffs and Chinese imports, or it's floods in the warehouse, like just all of these things, like.
And even Brexit, the amount of small businesses that are having supply issues at the moment, and when they can get hold of stuff, the prices have rocketed and they've already resold it it's just incredible the amount of challenges that have come up in the last 12 months for small businesses. And some you can preempt, some you can't, but I think you're right. If you almost take the last 12 months as a blueprint of worst case scenario, and what would happen if, and then get that contingency planning in place and mitigate as much of it as you can now, so that you're not sort of having to do some mad dash when something happens, because it's almost too late then, or at least you will feel an impact still.
Yeah, definitely. I actually know somebody who pivoted in lockdown. They just had a product business. Sorry, they just had a service business. And then they quickly pivoted and switched to online as well. And now they've got both, with a view of, should something happen online with the products, or should another enforced super duper lockdown happen, it would kind of balance out. And that is the fundamental rule of finance and investing as well. Literally, it's as simple as don't put all your eggs in one basket.
Yeah, and I think that applies to business across all of it. Don't put your eggs in one basket. So simple steps that can be taken. If you feel like you've only got one type of service or product, have a look at what else you can do that fits the needs of or meets the needs of your clients. And then have a look at your marketing plan and see where there might be gaps, and really get that working for you while you're not working, are my two top tips, I suppose. There are plenty more, but let's leave it there so we don't overwhelm people. So let's move on. Unless have you got anything else you want to add before we move on?
I would actually just add one quick tip, and it's something that I did myself. I personally believe it's high risk to think that you can do everything. But if you can, that's great. But a big learning curve for me, stepping out of being a wealth advisor into being a business owner, was knowing where my weaknesses are and hiring people to help with that. Because look, I am terrible at admin. It's just not my bag. And so I worked with this really fantastic business consultant who helped streamline my processes. You might know her. And
I'm going to get that in writing.
There was, at a point I was like, do I want to do this? There's this pride and ego thing as well. It's my business, I can do it. And I realized it was more detrimental to kind of soldier on with that mentality than to think there's someone who has the skill set, I don't have it. let's just relinquish a bit of control, because it's definitely high risk to do everything yourself, because if you get sick or you get burnt out or whatever happens, you've got creative block, it's just you. So do be open to help and to asking for help.
Yeah, I love that. What a great point to end on. Thank you. So, yeah, let's move on to the final wrap-up questions. This is where it changes pace slightly. So let's see what you've got.
Oh, I'm under pressure.
So, first question. What is the biggest plot twist that you've had in your career or business so far?
Well, the biggest plot twist is I switched from fashion to finance. I did not see that one coming at all. I mean, I think I came out of the womb knowing that I would own my own business. I just thought, I always thought it would be fashion, design, something creative. And then, yeah, I'd always liked the markets and finance. And then one day I just thought, that's where I want to go. That's what I want to do, and could never have predicted. And to come full circle, I'm back working with designers and creatives. So I
love that, merging your two worlds. That's fantastic. Okay, that is quite a plot twist. Goodness me. I can't even fathom the moment at which you went, oh yes, I want to leave fashion and do finance.
Yeah.
Brilliant. I love it. Okay, so next one, the worst business advice you've ever received.
Oh, wow. That's a question. The worst business advice. So the advice itself wasn't horrendous, but I think it set the tone for how I would continue moving forward. So I was doing a training session, a huge training session with lots of senior people, lots of directors, and you had to give a 3-minute talk on a topic of your choice. And I wanted to do it on the Met Gala. It was the year that Rihanna wore, I think it was the Galliano, the Pope's outfit. And I was so passionate about it. And a mentor at the time said, no, you should speak about whatever it was, really financy topic. And so I listened to him because I was like, he's older, he knows what he's doing. And the lady marking us slated me. She was like, why did you do that? Because before that, we did a freestyle round where we introduced ourselves. Yeah. She was like, the Jade that introduced herself and the Jade now are two different people. Yeah. And that was a real lesson for me, that just because someone is, I don't know, fill in the blanks, older, more experienced, X, Y, Z, doesn't mean that they know what's best for you. And so from that moment, I've always backed myself and followed my gut, even if the people above, quote unquote, would do it differently, I'll always back myself.
Yeah. You do you. I think that's a perfect fit for that statement, isn't it? You do you. And when you do you in your way, like you attract the people that you want to work with and surround yourself with. So yeah.
Wow. But on the flip side of that, one of the best pieces of advice I got was, it was to do with imposter syndrome, which I don't think ever leaves us. But somebody said, if you're in a room and you feel imposter syndrome, that suggests that you want to be like those other people and you don't feel like you compare. Do you want to be like them, Jade? And I said, well, no, I just want to be like me. And she was like, exactly. So why are you comparing yourself to them if you don't want to be like them? I was like, so that's kind of the flip side of that, is something I take with me.
That's awesome. Wow. I like that. Okay, so tell us what is next for the Shiny Investor. What are you up to?
So as I said, I'm finishing out my website, and there'll be a whole suite of information there because, like we said, a lot of self-employed people or business owners don't even know what's out there to look for it. So there will be tailored content for business owners, women, creatives, men, a whole range of people. Yeah. I'm putting the finishing touches on my personal finance course. So that's just kind of a 101. What is it? why should we be doing this? How do we do this? And then what are the next steps? Because a lot of people are interested, they just don't know how to start. So hopefully this will be the starting blocks that they need. And then continuing to just spread the word about, financial freedom and building wealth. And then I'm also, of course, working with my clients. I'm in a very fortunate position that I'm taking on really cool people doing really cool things every day, learning more about new industries as well. So yeah, continuing to build that business and helping people build wealth.
That sounds amazing. And you do a great job. I love following your financial stuff. It's so engaging. And I think I've worked in financial services and fully appreciate how dry it can be. And even though I know my stuff vaguely with it, it's still very dry and interesting, and it puts me off. And then you came along and I was like, I like financial services again.
Well, thank you. That is a big compliment.
That's all good. Thank you so much for spending some time with me to chat through this subject.
Thanks for having me. It's been fun.
Yeah, it's been good. Thank you. And thank you for joining us on Innovate Thrive Other. And do you want to tell everybody where they can find you?
Yes, so on Instagram, it's at The Shiny Investor, and my website is theshinyinvestor.com.
Brilliant. Thank you. So I hope you've enjoyed this episode of Innovate Thrive Other. Let me know. You can find me on Instagram as well. You can send me a DM. And if you have any questions about anything that we've covered, feel free to pop a message over to myself or Jade. And we'll see you next time.